What's up guys, welcome to patch 1.5, it's Skill Up here. For those of you that don't know what this series is, every single week I go around to every single damn vendor, check out what they have, and I tell you what the best stuff is. I don't go through everything, I only tell you the things that are worth noting. So if you like this sort of content guys, give it a like and be sure to subscribe for up-to-date division coverage. This video is going to be a little bit different because it's the first vendor video of the patch, and I need to explain something important, and that is to say that the vendor loot that you see is now tied to your personal gear score. Before, it was actually tied to your world tier, and you could actually drop up or down world tiers to get the same item, just with, you know, different stats or different stat requirements if you wanted to hit your weapon talents. You can't do that now. It's entirely dependent upon your personal gear score. What that means for you when you first log in is that you are not going to see 256 gear if you're in world tier 5. You're only going to see 229 gear. What you need to do is go out, pick yourself up 3 items, and that will then push your gear score over the threshold where your vendors will then change, and then they will then sell you 256 gear score items. For me, I just picked up my supply drop, which I had waiting, so anyone that had the season pass can do that. But similarly, if you just cruise the open world for a few minutes on world tier 5, you're going to be able to survive it just fine, and you are going to pick up enough loot to tick those vendors over to 256, and then you can start buying the stuff that I'm going to talk about in this video. It's exactly the same stuff on the lower gear score tiers, it just has better stats at 256. So with that out the way, let's take a look at what's on sale this week. So the very first thing I want to point out is that this guy's not selling anything good, don't worry. Basic sealed caches down the bottom here. Once you hit 256 gear score, basic sealed caches are sold for 400,000 credits, right? That's actually not that much money, considering that you can actually sell the entirety of your stash, all of your saved up gear sets and weapons, because they're all pretty much useless now, to be perfectly honest. You're going to be replacing them, and you're going to be replacing them pretty damn fast. Sell them all, and then you can actually just buy a whole bunch of sealed caches if you like. As you open up those sealed caches, you then get Phoenix credits, and then you're going to be able to spend them at the vendor downstairs in the terminal to buy gear set caches. So it becomes this kind of cycle where you can do this and you get a lot of loot from doing this. So if you've got lots and lots of credits stacked up, my advice is to spend them, because really there's no point in saving them. At the Dark Zone gear vendor in the base of operations, this guy is selling a tactical pack that has Resourceful on it. Resourceful is the talent whereby all healing applied to you is also applied to your skill objects, such as your turret or your support station or your ballistic shield. Many people that run ballistic shield love this specific backpack or this specific talent. So if you're looking at that, do check this out. It rolls with base firearms and armor as well, so it's actually a pretty decent roll. Now, the advanced weaponry vendor, there are definitely a few things to say here, so we're going to spend a minute or two. Long story short, the Pecan is one of the best weapons in the game in patch 1.4. It is even better in patch 1.5. If you get to 256 gear score in terms of your vendors and you've got some spare money lying around, I'd strongly consider purchasing this weapon. It rolls with Swift, which has actually been buffed. It used to be 15% reload speed, it's now 25, which is a significant increase, and it has very easy talent requirements to meet. Destructive, armor destruction value now applies in PvP. It applies by a factor of 0.3, so that is to say, you've got 15% here. In PvP, it will actually be 5%. So you divide that by 3, and that's how much bonus enemy armor damage applies to PvP targets. Ferocious damage against elite and named enemies is increased by 10%. It's always been great. It's always been fantastic in that third slot because it has a very high electronics requirement otherwise. So this is an absolute it's just an awesome weapon that just got even better, and you can literally buy it straight off the shelf as soon as you hit 256 gear score. So my recommendation, think about it. Things like the Cassidy and the Centurion are not particularly great, so I really wouldn't recommend those if I were you. This AUG A3 Para XS, however, is very solid. It comes with Fierce, which does have a fairly high electronics requirement, so I'd probably recommend rolling that away, even though the crit is nice on an SMG. It's got Destructive, which we've just spoken about, and Vicious, which is crit chance, which synergizes really well with the built-in critical hit damage on an SMG. The AUG is still an excellent SMG. I personally really enjoy using an AUG, so if you do as well, then check this one out. There's also a military M870 here. It's got Brutal, Swift, and Deadly. Now, Brutal obviously has had its requirements increased, but don't worry, you're going to be able to hit that at World Tier 5, at 256 gear score. You're going to hit it fine. Swift we've spoken about. Deadly is okay on this, but it's nothing spectacular. I'd probably roll this away, given that you're not really looking to stack a lot of crit on a shotgun. It's more headshot than anything else. But yeah, it's a nice shotgun, even though the M870 has been significantly nerfed and shotguns have been nerfed on console because they've adjusted the aim assist. This is still a very respectable weapon. Downstairs at the special equipment vendor, this guy is selling a fairly decent military M60E4. It's got self-preserved, prepared, and meticulous. I personally would actually be rolling away meticulous on this. Everyone talks about how great meticulous is on an M60. I think that's ridiculous because you have 200 bullets. I don't care if I have to reload after shooting 200 rounds. That sounds fair enough to me. To me, this is just overkill. I don't need more rounds. I don't need more throughput for an M60. I need more base damage, and that does not give me more base damage. So I would roll that away in that third slot. You can get whatever you like to replace it. Becomes a very respectable weapon. On top of that, we've got this tactical vest here that has Vigorous on it. Still a really nice talent to have. It gives you that overheal shield. It's got base firearms, health on kill, and health, so obviously you need to roll at least one of those away to armor. You'll notice this vendor is selling a lot of gear set items. They're all 256. They all cost, 832 Phoenix credits or so. So if you'd like to start building out your set pieces, do that. Make sure you're checking through each of them to see if they have the right sort of rolls. If they roll with base armor, that's a plus. For example, things on knee pads, if they have enemy armor damage in the minor slot here, that's a plus. If you want more information on that, be sure to check my best in slot video for patch 1.4, which is pretty much still accurate for patch 1.5. Down the bottom, there's a prototype performance mod here, which has turret damage on it. Fine, does the job, especially if you're looking at a Firecrest build and you're reliant on your turret to do damage. This certainly doesn't hurt. And there's an Omega Rifle Suppressor tan here with headshot damage, crit hit damage, and stability. But if you want my advice, I'd hold out. There is a much better suppressor coming later in this video. The very last thing I want to talk about is this guy sells weapon caches for, he sells weapon, gear, mod, and gear set caches. They're all 200 Phoenix credits each. So as I said before, you can actually dump a whole bunch of credits buying those other caches. They each give you Phoenix credits. You can then use these Phoenix credits to buy this cache, which will give you more gear that you can either use or sell. It's a very, very lucrative scheme, so do it as much as your resources will allow for. So the special blueprints vendor, funnily enough, when I looked at this guy when I was only 229 gear score, I could actually see the 256 blueprints while I was doing that. So obviously you don't need to be max level to access these blueprints. That's just a bit of an FYI. This week he's selling the RPK-74, which is the same archetype as the Pecan, a very nice, very respectable LMG. But to be honest with you, I'd probably just buy the Pecan because it's just so damn good. He's selling a Navy MP5N, which is an okay SMG, nothing particularly great. An electronics vest blueprints, firearms, knee pads blueprint. The thing that I would really point out though is this thing, this Omega Rifle Suppressor tan. This is the one that rolls with base headshot damage. If you're going to buy any weapon mod blueprints, I'd probably recommend buying this one and rolling quite a few of them until you get a god roll of headshot damage, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage. This is going to be your best bang for buck blueprint that you can get for weapon mods. He's also selling electronics gear mods. These are level 34, so these are upgrades over what you are using now, as well as a stamina gear mod. And the rest of the stuff here, we start getting into the 229 stuff and the old stuff. You don't want any of that. Downstairs at the underground vendor, this guy has changed. He's now only selling caches, and he's only selling the same caches as the guy upstairs. So basically, rip this vendor. At the Autumn's Hope safe house, which is up here on the map, there's a reckless chest here. It's rolled with base electronics, protection from elites, and exotic damage resilience. It's not a particularly good roll, but if you're chasing a 256 reckless chest to complement your build, this one might help you out. At the Wolves Den safe house, there are two really awesome purchases here. The first is a classic M60 with ferocious, self-preserved, and fierce. Now, ferocious, you're going to struggle to hit the electronics requirement in that top slot, so I'd probably recommend rolling that away. Self-preserved and fierce actually synergize really well together, so that's quite nice. The M60 isn't really a crit-focused weapon, but these two talents in unison kind of make it pretty good, so do check that out, see if that works for you. There's also an extended magazine with 110% magazine size, 4% critical hit damage, and 2.5% critical hit chance. This is a really good mod. It's not the best possible roll, given this is a level 34 mod, but given that you're taking a step up from 229 mods, this one is almost certainly going to be an upgrade for you, so I would recommend picking it up. I certainly will be. At Dantes Run, there is a really nice backpack here. You'll see it's a tactical pack. It's rolled base electronics. It's got specialized on it, which adds 200% of firearms and stamina to skill power. It's rolled base armor. It's a good backpack. It really works with a lot of builds. Anyone that's looking to do a sort of hybrid approach, stacking as much skill power as they can through the specialized talent, this one is for you. I haven't even looked at all of the vendors yet, but I'm already going to call this the purchase of the week. At the Camp Hudson weapons vendor, you're going to find a police MK17 here. It's got brutal, it's got intense, it's got cool-headed. The MK17 is part of the Scar H variant of marksman rifle. They are really top-notch at the moment, ever since patch 1.4 where they got a huge buff. They are really great. Brutal is obviously tailor-made for a marksman rifle. Intense, you would roll that away unless you were doing like a Firecrest build or something, and even then the electronics requirements is crazy. And cool-headed is the real money shot here. This talent rolling in the third slot like that is just fantastic. It's just a great, really awesomely rolled weapon. Just in case you're wondering, this requirement of 4,790 for firearms in Brutal is because it's a 256 weapon. So you're going to struggle to meet that at the beginning as you gear up, but don't worry, it'll be very easily met later on. Here at the Meat Locker safe house, I'm not sure if you remember last week, there was a God Roll Omega rifle suppressor with headshot damage, crit hit chance, and crit hit damage. Well, we've got another one here. It's 17.5% headshot damage, 4% critical hit damage, and 3% critical hit chance. Very similar in stats to the last one. So if you missed out on that suppressor, this one is for you. It's an absolutely perfect roll in terms of the types of stats. The roll on the stats themselves could be better, given that this is a level 34 item. But again, given that you're probably coming from 229 mods, if you don't have better, this is very likely going to be a big upgrade. At the Madison's Stand safe house here on the map, something that I'm sure many of you are looking for, which is a 256 pair of Savage gloves with firearms base. It's got critical hit damage, health on kill, and pistol damage. It's not a great roll, to be honest. The rest of it doesn't really work, but hey, listen, if you're really keen on a pair of Savage gloves, there they are. At the Ward safe house, you're going to find a pulse duration performance mod. I'm bringing this to your attention specifically because pulse actually got a slight nerf in patch 1.5. Specifically, it got a nerf to its duration. So if you are looking for pulse and you really use it a lot and you're reliant upon its duration because you're not stacking a lot of electronics, then this mod might be very helpful for you now. At the Southpaw safe house, you're going to find something here. It's a prototype performance mod, pulse critical hit chance. So we obviously just talked about duration a moment ago. Critical hit chance mod is obviously for more burst damage. Many people are using that, so take it if you need it. At the Grindhouse safe house, for the SMG lovers out there, there's an okay PP19 here. It does have brutal, it's got fierce, but it does have that electronics requirement. It's got hurried as well in that third slot, which you could roll away if you wanted it, if you were looking for more burst damage, or you could keep it if you were looking for more PvE sustained damage. It's up to you. I don't think it's a fantastic weapon, but I thought I'd bring it it up just in case it worked for you. At the Firewall Safe House, you're going to find a Reckless chest here. It is slightly better rolled than the last one we spoke about. It has base electronics, but it does have base armor and protection from Elite, so that's quite good. The other thing that's here is a prototype firearms mod. It's got skill haste there, which isn't obviously a great fit for firearms. However, anyone just looking to, hit their weapon talents, it's got 259 base firearms, so it's probably a very nice upgrade over the current firearms mods that you're using. At the East 53rd Street DZ checkpoint, you're going to find a prototype performance mod here with turret damage, same as we talked about before. However, obviously, you're buying it with Dark Zone funds as well. It's only 21,000, so it's quite cheap. You could stock up on a few of those if you need them. There's also a hand stop OD green here, which has reload speed as its major attribute, accuracy and optimal range. Anyone that's running an LMG like an M60 or an M249, I really recommend reload speed in the underbarrel slot. This ticks that box nicely. At the East 40th Street DZ checkpoint, you're going to find another prototype performance mod. This time it's Seeker Mine damage 4%, not a bad roll. Great for Firecrest builds, given that they're very often using the Seeker Mine. At the East 34th Street DZ checkpoint, two really great items here. The first is a Spec Ops pack. It has Specialized, which is the one that adds 200% of firearms and stamina to skill power, and it rolls with base skill power as well. So if that's what you're going for, this one perfectly synergizes with that. The other thing is a prototype firearms mod that has rolled with base armor. This is pretty much the best type of firearms mod that you can get. The roll on it at 236 isn't particularly impressive, but the fact that it has that very high roll on the bonus armor is pretty great. So pick up a few of those if you want my advice. You are going to need quite a few of these throughout patch 1.5. At the East 34th Street DZ checkpoint, there's a ballistic shield prototype performance mod. It's got 6.5% ballistic shield health. This is going to be very useful to anyone running the defense set, or the frontline set as it was known. It's the set that lets you use an SMG whilst using your ballistic shield, so do pick up a few of these if you need them. At 5th Avenue, the DZ checkpoint there's an electronics mod that has bonus armor on it. It's 265, so it's quite a nice roll. It's 266 on the armor, also quite nice. I personally need at least one electronics mod in my gear to hit some of my weapon and my weapon talents. So yeah, this is fantastic. I'll absolutely be picking up one of these right now. At the West 34th Street DZ checkpoint, there is an M870 here. It's okay. It's got competent on it, but it's in that top slot, so you're going to struggle to hit the requirement. You've got accurate on there, which isn't super helpful for shotguns. And you also have brutal in that third slot, which is nice, but you kind of want that third slot to be for something else, like, for example, competent. So yeah, I mean, it's there if you really want an M870, but I probably wouldn't recommend this one. At the West 46th Street DZ checkpoint, there's some really good stuff here, actually. First up, a SOCOM Scar L, which is an assault rifle. It has 23% armor damage, which is quite nice. It's got destructive, which is even more armor damage, very helpful. It's got deadly, which is okay if you're stacking lots of crit, obviously. But this third slot actually makes that all work. Using a skill increases your critical hit chance by 7.5% for 15 seconds. Usually has a very high electronics requirement. You get that one for free. So this weapon actually synergizes really well. You stack lots of enemy armor damage. You've got deadly and you've got adept for bonus damage driven by crit when you really need it. And yeah, so it could be a really good option to take into the Dark Zone if you're keen on some PvP. There's also a tactical vest here. It's got base, stamina roll, and robust, which increases your armor while in cover by 10%. This is going to be really good for you as you're gearing up and as you're moving into World Tier 5. Your toughness is going to drop, and any bonus armor that you can get to sort of make yourself a little bit less squishy is going to be very, very helpful indeed. Finally, there's a prototype performance mod here with support station healing speed. So if you want that heal throughput, that one is for you. Now, just as a reminder, at DZ6, you can actually get a whole bunch of 256 gear set items here. They do cost quite a few Dark Zone credits or Dark Zone funds. However, you know, they're there. You can just buy them. And in particular, they actually sell 2 pieces of the new defense gear set. They've got the mask and the holster here. So if you're keen on that, then check it out. This would be a really quick way to build a 4-piece for that. The other thing I'd point you to is to this Alpha Bridge knee pads. It rolls with base stamina. It's got enemy armor damage here. You would roll this away and change that to armor, and you'd have a very respectable set of Alpha Bridge knee pads. I personally run Alpha Bridge. It's one of the best gear sets you can get, so I just wanted to point this one out to you. At the DZ4 vendor, the one that sells the gear mods, she's selling a base electronics mod with bonus skill power on it. So if you're looking to stack that really high, this is the mod for you. And there's also a prototype performance mod here with 6.5% ballistic shield health, similar to the one we saw earlier. All right, now for the main event, the safe house in DZ3. This is the one that sells the weapons. He's first of all selling the new Rhino Special. It's a pistol that packs a lot of punch. It's a lot like a Magnum. It's rolled with Expert and Predatory. The 2874 electronics there is actually really easy to hit at World Tier 5 and when you're at 256. So that's not a bad pistol at all. If you want to polish off your enemy with this pistol, you'll be able to get that self-heal back. Not bad. There's a really nice tactical Vector 45 ACP here. Now it's got skilled, which unless you're deep in electronics, you're going to need to roll away. It's got destructive, which is excellent in now both PvP and PvE. And it's got ferocious, which is obviously a PvE only talent. It typically has a very high electronics requirement that you get to ignore because it's in the 3rd slot. The Vector is just a really nice weapon to use. It feels really good. It's still one of my favorite weapons. And if you're a fan of them, and if you're a fan of SMGs in general, I would definitely recommend checking this one out. There's also an MG5 here. Now this one has Predatory, which we've just spoken about. Very easy to hit the requirements. It's got Sustained, which is even more self-healing. And in that last slot, it's got Commanding, which is a pretty shitty talent. You could roll that away and get whatever you want. In terms of, you know, purchases this week and weapons, we've spoken about that cool-headed marksman rifle being really great. I think this is the number 2 pick for the week. It's a really solid weapon. And by the way, the MG5 is just awesome. It's amazing. They even had, they nerfed it during the PTS, but it's still very strong even with those changes. One of the strongest weapons in the game. So check that out. I certainly plan to pick it up if I can get the chance to grind out 416,000 Dark Zone funds. And finally, at the DZ2 safe house, there are actually 2 items that are not bad at all. The first is a tactical vest. It's probably the best reckless chest that we've seen today. It's got base, stamina, it's got armor and health, so it kind of compensates for the extra damage that you'll be taking with that one. Increased kill XP in that last slot isn't too bad either. It's also got a tactical pack, which rolls with base stamina, resourceful, which is what we've spoken about. It's the talent that heals your skill objects like your ballistic shield or your turret. It's got critical hit damage, which you could very easily change to armor, and that's it. So guys, that is it. That is one of the biggest and longest vendor reset videos I have ever done, but obviously we have new patches launched and lots of the stuff here is going to be useful to you. Grab it while you can though, because the vendor does reset on Saturday, which is, you know, not long from now. So get what you need, and I'm going to do another one of these videos on Saturday. You can always expect it from me, so be sure to subscribe to my channel if that's your kind of thing. And if you like this video, do drop it a like. For now guys, thank you very much for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.